We're so glad to have you with us, as always. Let's give a hand, Congressman Owens.
Sure, that's submit that.
You got it.
Right, yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I go back to my first exposure to the Sutherland Institute. It was actually just as I was beginning to decide to run for office, which is something I was saying when I was much younger I would never ever do. And out of that interaction, ended up meeting my deputy district director there. You guys see him later on, Alex. But let me just say before we get started with my talk, I like to thank those, particularly the older folks, law enforcement, those who keep a structure here in Utah, not only in college, but across the board. Thank you. Thank you so much for what you've done to hold on to a culture that's really unique. I grew up in Tallahassee, Florida. At the time, the days of KKK, Jim Crow segregation, and we had the same, believe it or not, the same type of environment. We had an environment that was based on four very basic tenets, and from that, the tenets were faith, family, free market education. And as a young man, we were taught to respect, and I just loved it. My dad was a World War II vet. We were taught respect of our elders. I was taught very basic tenets that I find here in Utah: love of God, country, family, respect for women and authority. And it really helped to kind of set the stage for me of how to make sure I'm disciplining myself, how I envision my future, the things I want to get done, and the respect that I like to have in a name that you work very hard an entire lifetime to get. So, oh my goodness, as soon as some of my buddies here, good to see you. But, and just know this, as I begin this process, this is such an important phase of your life. It's not just the education, the actual courses you're going through. It's the habits you'll develop in terms of how you interact with other people. It's so very important. And my dad was a college educator for 40 years. What I loved about our conversations is that we always said, he appreciated more my debate ability, my ability to articulate myself, as opposed to whether I agreed with him or not. And from that, we kind of had this culture of let's respectfully agree to disagree. That's the way I grew up. And I'll say this, the more you are confident about who you are, and that's a self-esteem thing. I'm not talking about how well you can add or subtract or read. How confident are you with who you are? Because if you are very confident in the way you think, your ability to articulate the way you think, you can give people space. You're able to give people room to be different, to disagree, because you know if you're nice, you're respectful, at some point your view will play out. You'll be able to bring that person over to your side. And if everybody's thinking that way, imagine how much our conversation will change as opposed to what we're doing right now. So I just want to say that this is a very important time. I've had a chance to talk, where's Maddie? Had a chance to talk to Maddie, and our conversations, I thought I'd like to share that with you, because these 4 years, or whatever amount of time here, is very, very special. So take advantage of it. Take advantage of those good people skill habits that you can learn here because of the diversity here. You take out there in the real world, I tell you what, people will respect that in a big way. Folks respect respect. They respect discipline. They respect being nice. Those kind of things are very, very important. So we might have some very passionate views that might be different, but even those passionate views can be talked about in a different way. So I want to make that point, and I want the adults in the room to thank you and your parents and your grandparents, because what we have here is not by accident. It's a culture that's been fought for very hard to be passed down from one generation to the next. And it's going to be up to this generation to understand what that looks like, why we're such a unique state, why we're the fastest growing state in the union. It's because people visit here and they feel something about this remarkable culture. They say, I think I could do this. And I've been in Congress now for a year, for one year and a half. What's the word I'm looking for? Term, thank you. That word was not coming. It was not coming. So 1 term and a half. And I tell all my colleagues that come and visit Utah, I said, listen, just know this up front. You come to Utah too often, you stay too long, and you'll become a Utahan. Right, Maddie? All right. So it's just know that, and I want to thank you guys for that. So I'm going to give you just some thoughts I have that we prepared earlier just to share with you. Just know that the first tenets that I'm going to talk about here is exactly what I grew up in Tallahassee. So I feel very, very proud to be part of a culture that still has it, because it's very, very difficult to hold on to. Okay, family values, pro-free market policies, quality education, and the visionary leadership has made Utah the best place to raise a family, start a business, and achieve the American dream. In a recent U.S. and World Report Best State Rankings, Utah was ranked first in the nation in its economy and fiscal stability, fourth in infrastructure, and fifth in education. Just so you know, my committees I'm part of is transportation infrastructure, and I'm the subcommittee for education and workforce. Our goal is make sure, our legacy is make sure that we're number one, not number 4 and 5th, but number 1 infrastructure and number 1 in education. We can do that. In Congress, my parties include ensuring all Utahns have access to quality education to succeed in the classroom, workforce, workplace, and today's economy. As the chair of the Higher Education and Workforce Development Subcommittee, I'm proud to spearhead innovative legislation to ensure world-class education to all Americans. The current federal student loan process is cumbersome, confusing, and lacks transparency. In Congress, I've introduced the Federal Assistance to Initiate Repayment, FAIR Act, which takes a critical step toward addressing the failures of the student loan program by providing fair, responsible path back to repayment for 40 million borrowers. The FAIR Act specifically will simplify and streamline the student loan repayment process, provide targeted financial assistance to those unable to repay their loans, tackle the predatory loan practices, and that's going to be big. I think we have to look at a system in which we have institutions that are paid right up front, full 100%, and then the students have to figure out how to succeed as we go through. There should be some skin in the game. There should be some accountability, some metrics of success. We're in a free market where the product is always, we have to decide if it's worth the price, if it's convenient for us, if it gives us a better feeling, and the product for our country right now are you guys. You guys are really what makes our country tick, and if you're a good product, we're gonna have a really great future. So that's our goal, and make sure that getting into debt that you can't get out is not part of the equation. Moreover, I am fighting to expand eligibility for the Pell Grant to include high-quality, short-term, online higher education programs so that every American has a pathway to success. Traditional higher education programs can seem daunting to those who do not follow the conventional educational path. For example, students aged 22 and older who work at least part-time, are paying for school independently, or have a limited discretionary budget are getting left behind by this traditional model. Learners from low-income backgrounds and veterans often juggle multiple life responsibilities and do not have control of their work schedules. For these individuals, online programs are their only way, the only access to education and training. Expanding the Pell Grant for these programs will empower students to pursue affordable and flexible academic options to help them succeed. I've also introduced the Mining School Act, a bipartisan legislation to increase and improve opportunities for American university and college mining and geological programs to prepare our students to meet the future needs, energy needs. The career and technical education is a driving force behind America's economic growth. And this is an area we have to really look at. You're gonna hear a lot about rare earth minerals, the fact of how important they are for our future, for technology. Well, in America, we have 600 men and women graduating from the mining schools. China, there's 1.5 million per year. So they seem to have it right. And we have so many young people that would, if they understood this profession, if they understood what it was, and that's where their focus and their passion was, the things we could do in terms of innovation would be remarkable. And also, by the way, there's a lot of money involved in some of these programs that right now that you'll be hearing about in time. That's why I supported the Freedom to Invest in Tomorrow's Workforce Act, bipartisan legislation to allow Americans to use 529 education savings accounts for skills training, credentialing, and certification programs. Current law only permits workers and families to use the 529 savings accounts to pay for college, universities, and vocational school expenses. It should be about choice. A recent University of Utah study projected that Beehive State's population will grow by 66% by 2060. To meet the demands of our growing economy and population, Utah needs a robust investment in essential transportation infrastructure to solve the traffic congestion, housing shortages, and rural transit challenges. Utah is also in the midst of a record drought. Top-of-the-line water conservation management facilities are vital for preserving our precious water supplies. As the first Utahn to serve on the House Transportation Infrastructure Committees over the last 2 decades, I'm proud to advocate for the infrastructure needs. This year, I secured $60 million from the United States Department of Transportation to fund a critical infrastructure project to provide 25 plus years of additional system life for the Utah transit system. I also joined with my Utah Congressional delegation to introduce a Salt Lake City Stewardship Act to allocate financial resources for drought mitigation, to employ more innovative solutions, and to replenish the water supplies and levels of the Salt Lake City. To say the least, it's been an honor of a lifetime. And again, as you go through this process, go out to look for your life passion in terms of income, have your families and your children, you'll kind of understand what I now understand. I have 6 of my children and 16 grandkids. Here are Utahns, so I'm all in. And at the end of the day, as we take that next step for that responsibility with family, you'll find that really is your next generation is everything. Everything you do, everything you sacrifice. I continue to talk about my law enforcement friends because you think about what they run toward, the issues that we run away from, is because they too see the vision for their kids living in a place of freedom, opportunity, and you will do the same. Once you find what that passion is for you, whatever it is, it will link in at some point to how your kids will benefit from it as you succeed with that. So I know we're gonna have some Q&A, some questions. I just wanna say once again, this is such a nice event. It's a sweet spot. Any seniors in here already? You have any seniors? Isn't it amazing how fast it went? I mean, get it? All of high school was to get to this point of going to college, and here we go, just like that, it's over. That's the way life goes, by the way. So take advantage of every piece of it. Be an optimist. Be a person who understands that this country is the greatest country in the history of mankind that gives you a chance to start all over again. You can fall flat on your face because of a place that gives you the opportunity to learn the lessons from it, to learn something called grit, to actually get the respect of people as they see you standing back up again, and then you look back on your lifetime and say it was all worth it because I did the best with what I was given. This is our country. There's nothing like it in the world today. So I'm hoping that you lean in hard to take advantage of the opportunities you have here and be an uplifter for other people. Let me just say this. I'm thinking of this, and it's not something I was planning on talking about, but it's so important, I think, for this crowd. For those who don't know, I played NFL for 10 years. Matter of fact, I played with the Raiders when they used to win football games. I know that's kind of strange for the young people, but those with gray hair, they get it. There was a time the Raiders were winning all the time. Came out of that to do something that I thought was going to be my life's mission, to start a business so that I can have impact on that community I grew up in that I saw was losing it. The community I grew up in the 60s, the black community, segregated community, believing those 4 tenets, led our country in the growth of middle class, 40s, 50s, and 60s, led the country in the growth of middle class, led the country in men matriculating from college, led the country in men committed to marriage. Up until 1970, black women had a higher percentage of marriage than white women did because we believed as men to take care of your family. In our community, if you didn't do that, you were not considered a man. You take care of your kids, you give yourself a good name, you show values to your community. And we also led the country in the percentage of entrepreneurs. That gave me an opportunity to always dream big, to learn how to take risks, as I watched my dad do the same. And when I left the NFL, I took a risk. I decided to start a business that was going to one day give me the opportunity to have a network, the financial place to actually help encourage young people to dream big. Well, one thing I learned about business ownership, you should always keep this in mind. because I always felt that all I had to do was work really hard. If I worked really hard at anything I did, it was gonna make it. Well, hard work is important, but when you come to business, you also have to have a good idea. Those two have to work hand in hand. And my hard work did not work with a good idea, and I lost everything. I'm telling you that's for some reason. I literally lost everything, including what I considered at the time a good reputation. You know, we lived in New York and had a good reputation as a good football player, a good person, all that, to all of a sudden move into a one-bedroom apartment with 4 kids, working the daytime as a chimney sweep, at night a security guard. And I had that one night looking up out the window saying, how in the world did this happen? I mean, seriously? Let me tell you, the best thing that could ever happen was my failure. At that moment, when I was asking that question, I had this impression that it was going to be okay. It was going to work out just fine. And a few months later, I was working as a corporate executive for WordPerfect, which used to be here in Utah, even though it was in New York at that time. And for the next 25 years, it was corporate sales. Here's my message, though. I've come to opportunities like this where I talk to young people, and I tell them how great our country is, that second chance is what it really is all for all of us. And the first thing I hear in some of these places, oh yeah, well you're a football player. Of course you're going to say that. Of course you're lucky. You had it made. And my message has always been this: yes, I was a football player for 10 years, but after that I was a chimney sweep and a security guard. And I'm telling you from that point of view, if I can do it, you can do it. And that's really should be the message that all you guys incorporate in your life. Don't be afraid to talk about those downtimes. As long as you come out of it, as long as you learn something from it, you can be such an inspiration to those who are going through the same thing at the same time. Our country built on empathy. We should be able to share those tough times to give people an idea that they are temporary. They make it through it, and that everybody goes through it. So don't take tough times personal, please. It happens to everybody. Matter of fact, the more successful you are, the more you're going to give some stories about, my goodness, I had some tough times. That's what life is all about, so you can grow up. So you can grow up and have something to give to other people, and that biggest thing to give to other people is a hope that if you can do it, they can do it. Okay? Okay, I didn't plan on telling you guys that, but anyway, I hope it helps up a little bit. So please look at me now as your congressman, as a former chimney sweep and a security guard, all right? That's very, very important. Okay, we're gonna.
Thank you, Congressman.
Okay.
It'll be my privilege now to ask you a couple questions.
Should we sit down or
Yeah,
just?
please,
Okay.
Please join me up here in the chair. And I actually wanted to start off, make sure this is what you need, Spencer. I might have a mic issue we might need to troubleshoot for a second, but maybe let's grab a handheld if we need to, just so it, okay, we're good? Okay, want to make sure the folks watching online can hear as well. I want to start off and first ask you, a lot of your remarks just now talked about grit and sort of personal agency. And the reason I pinpoint that is because I think it's easy in these kinds of settings and public policy conversations to be really fixated on, well, how can the government fix various issues that I'm seeing in my life or others' lives, or how can public policy create solutions? And I want to get to some of those policy questions as well, but first ask, why do you think it's so important, even when we're talking about public policy, to discuss personal and community and social capital? What's some advice that the folks in the audience could benefit from, especially in the context of self-government? What can we, the people, do before we necessarily turn to a public policy solution?
Great question. And there's, by the way, a book called Grit. And I'm going to highlight you guys. Everybody, look it up. Maybe audio. I have it on my audio book. Grit. I read it about 3 or 4 months ago, and what it did for me is help me understand what I had done when I was a kid that allowed me to finally get to where I am as an adult. Grit is what we all look for, and grit says very simply this: you will have tough times. That's the plan of life. Tough times, and then figure out what you can do to make a difference. One of the things that we have to also understand, and I was talking to Matt about this earlier, but what I really love about our Constitution, our four founders, is how humble they were. They were very educated, they were going through tough times, but they knew that they were not perfect. That's why the phrase, to become a more perfect union, is so important. They recognized that people will be better, our society will be better at time. And because they understood the concept of grit, which is basically looking inside and saying, what can I do now to make myself better, make sure I'm taking better care of my family, I can be a better steward of what I've been given. It's the opportunity to become your better self. And it will never, ever happen without tough times. So when it comes down to where the solutions come from, the easiest thing to do in life is to blame somebody else. To blame somebody else for the issues you're going through, blame somebody else for the decisions you've made, blame somebody else, and therefore somebody else has to give you the answers you need. Our country has always been based on the individual, we the people. The most powerful 3 words in the history of mankind are we the people. It's not only saying that what we can do together is we harmonize and can have conversations and come up with solutions, but where the solutions come from the very beginning is from within. If we all know that within we can have anything we do as long as we have a God in heaven that we're really tied into, that is really why that individual grit is so important. So I'll say this, there is a tendency, and we're getting more and more into this as the society is changing, is to point to someplace else, some folks who have no idea who you are, and please give me this, please help me out, please let me get through. It is amazing the quandary problems we have. We can either allow ourselves to ask for somebody else to do it for us, or look within. I'm hoping that as you guys through this process, that you learn something about what you're going through right now. And learn that the harder you study, the better you do. The harder you run and work out, the more shape you're in when that game time comes. The more the mistakes you make on the piano or the violin, the more you can produce a remarkable product when it really comes down to producing a product. That's what you should be learning right now. Tough times come. And probably some of the toughest things you have to deal with is relationships. You're dealing with relationships. And in that process of relationships, it's sometimes easy just to go along because we want to be liked. If you really want to know what's going to help you develop the kind of personality and the respect you want to have, be willing to stand by yourself if need be for things that you believe are right. You'll be amazed how many people look at you, will never ever tell you, but man, they say, wow. It is really awesome to see somebody standing up for something that I don't have the courage to do that. So utilize grit. I'm glad you mentioned that word. I hope everybody does pick that book up and read it. I give it actually anybody that I see that I'm seeing really working hard. That conversation comes down. Have you read the book Grit? So make sure that happens. Good seeing you.
So I want to ask now, kind of shifting from that personal motivation and agency. Obviously, public policy still matters, and I want to first ask a framing question. The topics of education, transportation, and infrastructure are not always discussed as part of a common theme. Sometimes they're viewed as separate issues. There's, of course, a lot of depth you can go into with each one of those policy areas. But I wonder if you could talk for a little bit about why we ought to think of those issues as linked, that education pathways and something like roads and rail lines and infrastructure, what is sort of the common theme among those policy issues that creates in your mind this idea of, well, these things linked together create opportunity for the next generation?
First of all, when I first got in Congress, there was one area that I knew I was going to be part of, and it really was just because it's been a lifelong passion. I knew, no question, I just had to find out which committee it was on dealing with education. So that was kind of the beginning for me. And I say that because, go back to Thomas Jefferson, ignorant and free can never be. If we're going to have a society that's free, that's willing to have conversations that are uncomfortable, that's willing to be respectful in our process, we have to be educated. The more educated we are, the more we can have those kind of conversations. The least we are, the more angst and triggered we get because we have no place else to go in our mind. So education was part of it. The workforce thing is something that we're all kind of knowing, and you guys have some remarkable opportunities. We have such a lack of workforce in every industry possible. If you're the person that works really hard, that comes early, stays late, does the extra work, you will have a remarkable future in today's world. Because there's people out there willing to pay big bucks to get somebody to show up and do hard lifting, hard work. And that hard work could be physical or it could be mental, but it is coming down to hard work. The other side of it, we spent a year and a half campaigning to get on transportation infrastructure. Now, part of that was because I understood Utah. We're the fastest growing state in the union. There's nothing like it. We have the most innovation. We have the most collaboration process from state. I was just meeting with the lieutenant governor before coming here. The things we can collaborate with, even though we have different lanes, it's remarkable. And we do it better here because we're a small state and we just have this culture that's so unique. What I'm finding out though is the link of education deals with how we first, not only do we have more business ownerships that now need to grow the workforce, and more of a workforce needs to satisfy that particular need. We have an opportunity right now with our growth is to figure out how to, in a very smart way, to grow our state further south, east and west, and still hold on to our culture. We can do that because of the way we collaborate, we talk about it. We also have a chance, because of the way we come with our solutions, to be the example for the rest of the country of how this works. So I look at both those committees as probably the biggest that I could do at this point. I look at that as our legacy committees. I want to be remembered as a team that was part of a delegation that disrupted a system, our educational system, so you guys are going to have more opportunities when you leave here, so you can have more opportunities to build your own businesses as you want to do that. And then also to be in a position where a state that's leading in so many ways can literally attract people to come here, afford to have businesses throughout our state because of broadband. They have education systems that's the best, so we can keep our kids here when they leave, and continue to build in a way that's very smart. So we're not putting too much pressure on any particular part of our state. So I see them working hand in hand, and I'm excited about being on both committees.
As you talk about committees, and in your remarks, you mentioned a number of pieces of legislation that you've been working on. Can you help educate our audience a little bit on the importance of committees? I think it's normal sometimes when someone says, what's going on in Washington? What's happening on a given issue? We check Twitter, I guess now X, formerly known as Twitter. But we check cable news. We just look at what's going on social media to kind of get a sense of what's happening. But in a previous event, of this series, a comment was made that look to the committees.
Yeah.
Who are the people on the committees? That's where some of the real work is getting done. Can you help maybe give sort of almost a mini civics 101 of the importance of committees and why the work that's there is really driving a lot of this progress?
The biggest key to committees is educating the people. Remember we started with the concept, we the people? When American people are engaged and they're educated and they know what's really going on, it helps them to vote one way or the other to make sure we keep it going or we look in a different direction. So the more engaged we are, and that's what the committees do. I've had being on the chair of the subcommittee for education and workforce, I've had a couple committee hearings I've had so far. One is the influence of China and the communists within our school systems. We have to understand something very simple, my friends. We kind of live in this little freedom bubble. We all do, because we live in the United States of America. We think about our goals, our future, our jobs, our girlfriends, maybe later on our husband and wives, our memories, building memories. We sometimes forget outside this freedom bubble is pure evil. There are ideologies that hate everything we stand for. They don't like faith, freedom, free market education. It's just the way it is. As there's good, there's bad. And sometimes we kind of forget this out there until something comes up, whether it be Pearl Harbor, 9/11, COVID, we're all sitting and say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Those are good moments for America, because we start engaging ourselves and educating ourselves, and all of a sudden tuning in to CNN to see what's going on in Congress. What are our Congress people doing to deal with our issues we're having today? We're now dealing with something very, very much in common, which makes it nicer for us to have these conversations. We're dealing with high inflation. We're dealing with a border that is just wide open, fentanyl and unvetted people coming through. We're dealing with divisiveness that many of us have never seen before like we are now. So you go through all these different things we're going through and dealing with, we want solutions. And that's where these committees come in. Our goal at the end of the day is not to continue to put our agenda out there, but put in front of the people those things that really you care about. Because if you care about it, you're going to tune in. And if we're doing our job right and articulating our thoughts right, you'll give us a chance to continue that process. If you decide that we're not doing anything, you need to fire us. You need to get rid of people who are not dealing with the issues that you truly want to have. And by the way, don't get caught up in people's names. Sometimes it's very easy to vote on a name. Educate yourself on the issues. What is important to you? And it's going to be different for everybody in here. Our goal, I'm hoping that through education like this and others, that you'll have the same high priorities that I grew up with: faith, family, free market education. If you do that, then we'll pass a remarkable opportunity down for our kids in the near future. So I mentioned the hearing on the Chinese influence, and they're all over the place. These guys, they have a plan that's been very ingenious and it's very insidious, and it's all about to break down our system of government. The other thing we had a hearing on is having a level playing field in terms of education. Everyone don't want to take the path you're taking, the path that I took. I went to the University of Miami. I did not go there, by the way, to be a football player one day. I was using football as a way to get a scholarship. I graduated in biology and chemistry because I wanted to be a marine biologist. Just so happened, thank goodness, I found some talent, or somebody else found some talent, and I was able to play. But my point is, it was that opportunity that, again, allowed me to see what we're doing. And with the hearings that we're having, I mentioned, the hearings we're having, there are other opportunities for kids to go through that might be their niche. It might be through trade school, vocational school, for-profit school. They might want to be a welder, might want to be a pilot. Everyone should have the opportunity to run for your dream. And to do that, we have to make sure that on our side, we're exposing America to those other options and making sure that that as you go through your process of figuring out what you want to do, that you have the best choices out there to make that happen.
You've mentioned a couple times the idea of different pathways, different kinds of opportunities. And of course, in this venue where we're here at a university, and the kind of the traditional four-year degree is a path that many people choose, and evidence shows it can be very, very helpful as far as upward mobility and financial stability and career options later in life. But I want to get your take on, and you mentioned growth as well, which is something we'll dive into in the policy panel immediately after this portion. But as Utah grows, we're adding people. There's a lot of demographic changes that are happening that we'll get into later. But what do you think needs to be the vision of education and workforce training? So thinking both K-12 as well as post-secondary. Is it just a matter of we need more seats, we need more capacity, or do we need a lot more options, more types of educational pathways, or is it a combination of both?
We recognize that every one of us are different. Everyone's have different passions, different things that will make us happy in terms of things we do. We have folks who live, their passion is to go out and study birds every day. They love it. And because they love it, they give us insight that a person like myself who do not like studying birds can now know at least. That's what makes us such a unique and special society. So what does it come down to? You think about the free market. We believe in a free market. Free market very simply says this: you should have choices, period. You should decide based on your day, whether it be pricing, convenience, the value, what's cool, whatever that might be. Your choice should be how you put that money that you worked hard for and get back what you desire to get. Choice. This is not something that happens across this country, around the world, my friends. You just don't have these choices. So based on that, we should give every young person the choice, the option to go in whatever their passion might be, and let them pursue their dreams. I'll tell you one thing: when you're going for something that you're really excited about, you don't mind taking risks, you don't mind failing, because you care about it so much, you'll get back up and keep going. That's the passion. And by the way, that's how we build great entrepreneurs in this country. Because you go through that process, you realize, I could have done it this way, I'm going to learn this. And before you know it, hey, you know what, I can make a lot of money by teaching what I learned. And people come with a value that I felt. So yes, we have to make sure every option should be on the table when it comes to education. Online, traditional, trade, vocational, whatever it is. And if people want to put their dollars in because they see their income, they should be doing it. Anybody who stops that, we have to be concerned about why. Why would somebody stop you having the choices you want to have in whatever arena you want to go in? Those are the voices we need to make sure we're standing up against. And thank goodness we have a conference now that truly believes in choice. And so we're going to make sure it happens in all levels.
In the context of creating that kind of educational system of pluralism of options that you're talking about, I want to ask you about the different roles and responsibilities of different levels of government. As context for that, in a previous congressional series and in an op-ed and on an episode of Sutherland's podcast, our education policy fellow, Christine Fairbanks, made the argument that if we really want to make important reforms in education policy, maybe Congress should actually do less and states should do more. So I want to get your reaction to that. I'm sure it's a little bit, hey, I'm in this institution where we're doing some good things, but maybe to frame the question in this way, what do you view as the appropriate balance between the role of the federal government and the role of the states with respect to education policy?
Those three words I mentioned before, we the people should have the most power in their hands to run their lives. That means getting closer, and that's why we do have we have a lane we need to stay in. And our goal really is to get us back into the lane we need to stay in. States should have more power. Districts should have more power. Parents should have more power when it comes down to education of kids from pre-K through 12. And at the same time, as we get into the higher ed, that's a little different conversation, because higher ed is a direct connect with the federal, with federal government. And we play a big part in taxpayers' income to make sure these places are being held up and thriving. So we should be holding those institutions accountable, which I'm excited about, because that's something we can do right now. When it comes down to pre-K through 12, which also needs a lot of reform, but it should be done on the state level. And let me say this, why am I so excited about where we are today? I have never seen the type of engagement with parents that I've seen these last couple of years. That's where it has to be. Parents have to know further. They know their child. They want to make sure their child is happy, successful, and so they should have a big play in terms of what's happening in the school system. And if that particular system is not working, that parent can say, you know what? If it doesn't work for my child here, I'm going to put them here. I'll put them here. I have grandkids that are going across the board, online, in school, hybrid. We're now looking at one of my daughters having 8 parents that can put together a pod with a curriculum that's really pretty cool. So this is really where the innovation comes in. And I'll say to the point, we should be, as Congress people, innovative legislators. We should not be mandating our all-encompassing wisdom on everybody on how you guys should be doing what you do. Innovative legislative says very simply this: I don't know it all. I'm trying to figure it all out. Innovators, please let me know what it looks like. Innovators, for instance, in this industry here, you're dealing with it every single day. How can we make sure we get a better result with our kids? They have not only higher educational metrics, but also higher professional metrics. They get into jobs quicker. If you're figuring that out, how can we help? And the question will be, is there a federal nexus or not? If there is, we'll work it out. If not, we'll collaborate with the state and figure out how can we support it, without strings attached, to support it in any kind of way we do. But it should be very, very key. We the people should have the ultimate power, and that's what our Constitution was set up from the very beginning.
We've got just a couple of minutes left. I want to give you a chance if there's anything else we missed on transportation to mention. And you mentioned growth earlier, especially as Utah is seeing these rapid rates of growth. Is there one thing that comes to the top of your mind that you really worry about us getting wrong when it comes to transportation or infrastructure broadly? Or to flip it, is there one thing that you think we really need to make sure we get this right to accommodate our growth here in Utah?
Okay. The only concern I have about getting it wrong, and this goes to education, we'll flip back to the other side of it. Only thing I'm concerned about with education in this remarkable state is we have parents that are very trusting. We live in a pretty cool culture where most people are really, really good folks. Crime rate is not that high, relatively speaking. We kind of just grow up thinking we can trust. Parents need to realize when you put your kids into school, follow up. That is your goal, to make sure that just working with the teachers the way I did when I was growing up. My mom was a high school teacher. My dad was a college professor. If I got in trouble in school, I knew there was no talking out of this one. Trouble was going to happen when I got stepped in the house, my first step in the house. There's gonna be trouble. And I couldn't say, Mom, Dad, she's wrong or he's wrong. No, I was gonna suffer the consequences because there was that connection that the product was at the end of the day gonna be a good one for our country, our society. So that's the only thing I'm concerned about. Make sure that we're getting engaged, understand the process, understand the curriculum, understand what your kids are, have a track of which you're succeeding, understand what that looks like, and then also understand what the options are. Okay, so that's on the other side of it. I am so excited about Utah. I brag about it all the time because we are really out front in so many industries. So many. I mean, I'm not surprised anymore. Whatever industry that we're talking about, we are innovative enough, we work hard enough, we collaborate enough that we are in the very, very top. We have things right now like the inland port that will literally make us a distribution hub of the entire West. We can take pressure off the West Coast. We can deal with import export from here. It's a right to work state, so we can do it at a much cheaper rate. We understand what it is to have a budget, to hold tight to it. So we can do things right here in that regard. And we also have the different facets throughout our state that will allow that to happen. So we're dealing with inland port, we're dealing with the Salt Lake City Airport, which is it's just a remarkable airport we have there. We're in a position of just doing some really good things, of drawing good people here. Here's what I want to make sure we also take into account. Let's not continue to export our most precious treasure, our kids. We need to make sure that we're growing out a place where our kids can afford to stay here. They have the jobs they can actually have here. They can start their businesses and knowing that the regulations will be low enough, they can be profitable. And we have the entire state, we can look at how can we grow ourselves in a smart way. We do that, we keep our culture, our kids, our propensity to be number one. This place, I tell you, it's just gonna be a great thing for your kids, your grandkids, and like you might be like myself, the miracle of having like 6 kids here and 17 grandkids, never thought that'll ever happen, but they're all within 45 minutes, and I wanna work hard to make sure it stays that way.
Congressman, we're about at time, so for the last question, if I could just ask for your brief response to leave us with a little bit of optimism. You mentioned in your speech the idea of being nice.
Yeah.
Those of us who are outside of observers of Washington, D.C. politics might conclude that there's no room for being nice back there, but I want to ask you, in our most intense policy debates, it's not about necessarily having to agree more, but is there space for being nice even when we're disagreeing in D.C. or elsewhere?
It is, and I'll say it regarding our conference. It's been a very unique time that we'll have back in D.C. I don't know how many guys stayed up late night and watched the 15 rounds. Anybody stayed up to watch that? There's 15 rounds to get our speaker. It was, adults across the country staying up 2 o'clock because something like that's never happened. We have a five seat majority, which basically means that we're gonna have a lot of disagreements. But if we can figure out how to stay focused on the one things we do keep in mind, that we do share our thoughts with. And right now, that thing for our conference is bring our country back. Make sure that the middle class stays as robust as ever. By the way, the middle class is what makes our country such a unique place. There's nothing like it anywhere around the world. I'll tell you why. Because that middle class that we work with to defend back in DC, that you guys can be part of, is where everything comes in: service, ingenuity, and innovation, making sure that people around are we're feeling we're accepting people because we have this faith, and that middle class is powered by the business owners. So that's actually what I think is going to be the upside of what we're doing right now. I think Utah has an opportunity to truly be the starter state of our country. The things you guys are doing here, just know that it's different across this country right now. We might not agree on everything, but boy, the way we resolve our issues is really cool. We're more patient. Not that it's always perfect, we're more patient. We try to find that line of commonality. I think that Utah, at the end of the day, because we lead in so many different ways, and I talked about it before, I looked at, we were number one. Let's make sure I get this right. We're number one in economy and fiscal responsibility. Well, once we become number one in everything else, infrastructure, education, embracing our differences, having conversations that are difficult, but we can still make it through it and then go to a football game or basketball game. Those are the things that we have a chance, because of our culture, to do that's not out there anyplace else. So I want to say this, you guys have been blessed, whether it be to have been raised here or to, like Maddie, come and visit for a while. This is a remarkable place to hone your skills that will impact not only you, but people across this country and around the world. So take advantage of it. Be optimistic, have grit, realize that you're here for a purpose. It's not by accident. You're sitting here right now. And take advantage of that and really make it good for yourself. And as you do that, everybody else will benefit too.
Congressman, thank you so much for your time.
You
Let's have a
betcha.
round of applause for our speaker.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.